So this is a strange session, but it's also going to be a fun session, and it's going to give you a lot of food for thought. Anticipatory action and what can go wrong? The answer is probably anything. But in the first part of this presentation, actually, I'm gonna talk to you about being wrong. And I'm gonna start with a little story. So my name is Stefania Giudini. During my daytime, I'm the operation leader for the data team of the Netherlands Red Cross, basically a team of computer nerds working for the Netherlands Red Cross. And in my nighttime, I'm consulting for the Climate Center. And but the thing that I find most fun is doing this kind of presentation, like fun and with a lot of food for thoughts. So this is about what can go wrong. Together with me, there is Bettina Coelle from the Virtually Amazing team, which is great technical support. Everybody should have a Bettina. This presentation is gonna be virtually amazing thanks to her. I don't take any credit, I just do the talking. So being wrong, I want to start talking to you about a little story. So I'm Italian, but some years ago, I was living in Germany and I was on the subway. And just nearby, there was this group of young Italians that were going to a festival, and they were discussing with each other about how fun was going to be. Of course, I was Italian too, so I was eavesdropping. And at some point, one of them asked a question that probably was nagging him from the beginning of the ride, and was, guys, how do we get back? I don't remember the name of the station, of the subway station we hopped on. Does anybody know? One of them was coming with the answer. Of course, I thought about that. Takes out the camera and says, I took a picture of the station we hopped onto. Great, genius. So he takes out the camera and he shows to everybody this picture. Yes, so this is Ausgang. Ausgang is German for exit. This could be any subway station in Germany, even in Austria. Of course, I know how that guy must have felt in that moment. He was so wrong. He was embarrassed. He was frustrated. He was probably also a bit worried because how do I get myself and my friends home now? So this is how it feels to be wrong. I mean, being wrong is not nice. So why being wrong doesn't feel so good? Well, my interpretation of this is that we learn these lessons, these bad lessons, very early in life. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you something that some of you may have seen when they were in second grade. So imagine now to be in second grade and to be handed out a quiz paper from your teachers. And one of them is looking like that. It's a spelling exercise. There are a lot of errors. It's still C, but it's C minus. There is a red thing, see me, please. Everybody knows what that means. That kid is probably the troublemaker. He's probably not so smart. So we learn by second grade that the way to be successful in life is not making mistake, being perfect. And that is a really bad lesson, because what is actually true is that making mistake and being wrong is the only way to learn and to improve in life. So now I want to ask you, how do you feel when you are wrong? And I will hand over to Bettina for this little interactive exercise.
Let me find my unmute button. All right, great. Would like to ask you to go to Mentimeter and type in the following code. It's menti.com, and this is the code on menti.com. Tell us, how does it make you feel when you realize you are wrong? How does it make you feel? Why does it say writing is closed? Let me present. How does it make you feel? Are you able to vote? I hope I'm getting a funny message here saying voting is closed. That is disconcerting. How's that for how's that for what can go wrong? All right, here we go. Oh dear. Are you able to vote now? Still not? Oh dear, please type in the chat. How does it make you feel when you realize that things go wrong? How's that for a total Murphy's Law? Please type in the chat. How does it make you feel when things go wrong? Embarrassed, feeling like an imposter, make you feel uncertain, regretful, ashamed, depressed, but still having the willingness to learn, erodes confidence, unconfident. Very good. Would love to. Regret, worried, frustrated. Great. Wanting to try again. Nice. Anxious. Great. Let's hear a couple more. Sometimes not wanting to try again. Okay. Some people feel more positive than others. And I think with this, Stefania, I'll hand over to you again.
Those are great questions. I think I felt any of those feelings sometimes in a succession, like, oh my God, stuck, wanted to try again, but depressed. This so much resonates. However, I've asked you, how do you feel when you are wrong? But actually what we are seeing here is, how do you feel when you realize that you are being wrong, right? Because being wrong, but not having realized yet, it feels like something. It feels like being right. And I want to show you a little cartoon. Bettina. Being wrong, actually, can be also just making screen sharing go wrong. That's all fine. We are all learning. Perfect. Yes. Okay, many of you may know this cartoon. This is Wile E. Coyote from Warner Bros. But this is basically a story that I loved when I was a kid. And it was always this coyote running after a road runner. And it will always end, of course, with the coyote like running off a cliff behind the road runner. And for the road runner, of course, everything was fine because he's flying. But the coyote was like running in mid-air. And at some point, realizing that it was not on solid ground, looking down and hoo-ho, boom, precipitating in the abyss. It was always ending like that. So being wrong without realizing is exactly like being the coyote who runs off the cliff behind the road runner without realizing that there is no solid ground. So it's that situation in which you're running off the cliff, you're already in trouble, but you have not realized, you have not looked down yet. So you actually are feeling like you're doing everything right. But it's only when you look down that things really go wrong and you realize you're wrong. And then you have all these feelings of shame, worry. Well, the poor coyote probably like desperation because he's running off a cliff. So I think this is like a really good example of how important it is to realize that you are wrong. Because if you don't realize that you are wrong, you're actually keeping feeling right and keeping on doing the same thing. I remember Einstein used to say, if we keep on redoing the same thing over and over again, this is actually the definition of madness. So what do? We just have to realize we're wrong and share it and learn from it, right? One thing that I can take from my personal experience is that one thing I learned is actually that I have been wrong a lot of time and I've learned to realize it sometimes a bit quicker than what I was doing when I was younger. I can tell you another little story. So when I was 11, I decided I would become an astrophysicist. Yes, this was my dream. This was where I was going to be working. I will be looking at the stars for all my life, studying the galaxies. I did it. I did high school for science. I did physics. I studied astrophysics. I got a PhD from Max Planck. I was there at the university, like top, doing astrophysics. And then I looked at my professor and looked at myself and said, actually, I don't want to be that. It was such a moment of realization. I felt horrible. I went to all the spectrum of feeling being wrong, personal failure. Oh my God, I threw away like 10 years of my life or more. But actually, that was probably one of the most learnful moments in my life, because I realized that one, it is important to listen to yourself. Two, when you are wrong, you can actually learn a lot. And look at where I am now. I think I have the best job ever. I work for the Red Cross. The reason why I didn't want to be an astrophysicist is that I wanted to work with people, and I have the most people work ever. So I could not do this without realizing I was being wrong. So it is so important to realize you're wrong. And it is for this is so important to do things and to make mistakes. So I would really like to finish this first part of this presentation with a quote from one of my favorite author is Neil Gaiman, is a fantasy author. And if you flash your first next, yes, this is the quote. This is my wish for you. So he said, and it was a New Year's wish, I hope that in this year to come, you make mistakes, because you are making mistakes, that you are making new things, trying new things, learning, living, pushing yourself, changing your world. And this is what we want to do. This is what we want to do with anticipatory action. But that means we need to make mistake. We need to realize it. We need to realize that we are wrong. We need to feel horrible, and we need to come out from it winning and actually learning from it. And that's it for the first part of this presentation, because many of you may have dropped in and saying, hey, this is what was about to be about anticipatory action, right? Let's go to anticipatory action. Next slide. What can go wrong with anticipatory action? So many of you may be already working or wanting to work with anticipatory action. When people ask me, what is anticipatory action? Well, when it was first presented to me, my first reaction was, wow, if we were in the Middle Age and not in 2020, anticipatory action would be something for wizards and shamans. Basically watching in the crystal ball and predicting what was coming forward. And then somebody was just waiting for that prediction to act and save life. No pressure at all. Now we are in 2020. We have great math offices, data, forecast, prediction. So it seems that everything is there, right? Nothing can go wrong. And guess what? Things go wrong. And that's where we are now. We are looking back at what went wrong and how to learn from it. But we need this moment, us together, to look at what went wrong and learn from it. So I had the two choice at this point. I was talking with Bettina and saying, well, what do? Do we do like a very boring session about lessons learned with like sharing and guess what? We decided no. We decided to do an interactive session. And what I want to do is to share a couple of stories with you. These are anonymized stories from real life experience in anticipatory action. They're anonymized, but things really happened. And how we set it up is that we set it up as a choose your own adventure. So I'm going to tell you the context, and then I'm going to ask you, guess what happened next. Of course, there is no wrong answer, but there is one only storyline that happened. And I'm going to tell you what happened at the end and how we learned or we are learning from it. Okay, let's start this. Bettina, we have a Mentimeter, right?
Yeah, it's working. I hope. You'll tell me. You'll tell me if not. It was just pressing Control-C. So there we go. I've learned something already in the session from when things go wrong. And let me share the Mentimeter so you can see the results as well. Here we go.
Okay.
The story.
Awesome. Okay. Imagine you are in a country, we will call it X-land, whatever fantasy land that you want, but it's a country that is extremely prone to typhoon. Every year there are typhoons. It's a very populated country, and some of these typhoons are actually very destructive. So you can imagine this is a country in which we are working for anticipatory action. lot of people have been working on setting up an early action protocol. There is an anticipatory action that is being set up in place. Now we are in ERX and typhoon season is starting. What happens? Option 1, everything is prepared. The early action protocol is submitted and everything is in place. Everybody's ready to act. Option 2, the early action protocol is submitted, everything is done perfectly on paper, but nobody is informed and nobody is ready to act. Option 3, nothing is in place. Actually, the early action protocol has been submitted, but it was lost in the email inbox of the verification committee and nobody knows where it is. 1, 2, or 3?
Great, we see some votes coming in. Thank you for sharing with us your best guess. Obviously, Stefania will tell us the solution and what happened next. But let's first see from your own experience, using your imagination, what do you think that was the situation? I think we have a vast majority who think the protocol is in place, but nobody is informed. And if you've just joined, should I say, please join menti.com. You'll find it here on the slide with a code, so you can participate in this storytelling exercise. Over to you, Stefania. What do you say? What happened?
Okay, when I look at the answer on the screen, I can so much understand you because, of course, I primed you. This is a what can go wrong session, right? Everything must have been wrong. But actually, at the beginning of this story, everything seemed to be right. National Society has worked with stakeholders, everything was in place, protocol was submitted, approved, and everybody ready to act. So those 5 people in blue, they were right. But I do understand you why there are those 22 people in pink, because that's a big risk. But in this story, everything went good until now. Next. So what happened next is that there is a forecast for a tropical storm forming nearby this country in the ocean. It doesn't seem to be such a very impactful event. And when the anticipation system is being monitored, it seems like a no activation. However, there is a nearby country, we will call it Wyland, with the independent observatory and forecast. And that forecast says, oh my God, this is going to be huge. This is going to be a big typhoon and it will impact a lot. So we have all of a sudden 2 forecasts. In your opinion, which forecast is being acted upon?
All right, we can see the votes coming in. I think there is a small bias to the one that predicts little damage. That is actually, but votes are still coming in. I see some people are confident that an alternative system, an alternative forecast has also been used. If you've just joined, please log into menti.com, code 4684411. And you'll be able to join in the guessing of the story and what happens next. So Stefania, what happened next?
Yes, so I see great answers here. Many people know that this is a protocol. So of course, the National Society and all the stakeholders, they followed the forecast that was in the system and predicted little damage. But you can imagine how many times this must be happening, that there is another forecast out there, because there are a million of observatories and monitoring systems, that they may predict something different, because we are talking about models. Remember the crystal ball, looking in the future with uncertainties too in the crystal ball? Yeah, so every time you are performing an anticipatory action, you may be in this situation. So in this case, there was a huge discussion actually, because emotionally, you're like, oh my God, what if this is huge? We have to follow the system. So this is what was done. The one in the system was the forecast that was acted upon and that predicted little damage. What next? The storm intensifies. So the prediction that I was talking about, we are a few days before landfall, but now we are really in the regime in which we have to decide if to trigger or not. The storm intensifies and actually becomes something that could be really near a threshold of anticipatory action. In your opinion, what happens? We actually cross threshold 2 days before, which is good because 2 days, it's good to make anticipatory action. This is also what was written in the protocol. We managed to actually mitigate suffering and save life. The system activates, option 2, but 3 hours before. And remember, there was a forecast that was telling beforehand that this is going to be huge. In 3 hours, no anticipatory action can be done, and actually nothing is done. Third option, nothing happens. The system never activates because the threshold, the typhoon is predicted to be fairly strong from the forecast that is used in the system, but does not pass threshold. So nothing happens. What do you think it happened?
Looks like we have a tie. Some people say that, I think people agree that the system was activated, but the time people are not agreeing necessarily. 2 days before is favorite, but followed by 3 hours before. So just before the event hits. So what happened?
Okay, I really feel the wishful thinking. However, this was a disastrous non-activation. The system actually activated, but 3 hours before. There was no early action possible or prepared in 3 hours. Remember, there was another forecast that was saying, hey, beware, this is going to be huge 2 days before. So imagine how that must have felt. It really went wrong. The National Society is sustaining, of course, reputational damage, a lot of questions. Why the system did not activate early enough? Why there were no early action possible in 3 hours? Well, there are a lot of answers to that. But imagine being in that storm of questions on the spotlight. What about the other forecast? Should we now follow the other forecast because it was right this time or not? Should we include more forecast in the system? All these questions are going on in the head of people right now. So this disastrous non-activation actually was a huge learnful moment. The old protocols for disasters that have very fast variability is being now rethought. Do we need more flexibility in the early action? Do we need to have a more distributed system that allows very fast early action? Do we need to compare multiple forecasts and how many? How? It's a huge debate, but that was actually triggered by this case. So this is where we really need to talk about what went wrong. This was terrible. It's horrible to talk about this, but we need to do it because we need to evaluate, we need to learn from it, and we actually need to adapt. I would like to make a little experiment, Bettina, because I have another story for you. But after having shared this, I want to see if people actually want to talk to us. And I would like to ask, would you feel like putting your hand up and sharing an experience of something that went wrong in anticipatory action, anonymized, totally anonymized? You can change anything. You can change, we don't need to know the country. We don't need to know the real times. We just need to know something happened that went wrong. And how did you feel? And what did you learn from it? I will wait some second. And if I don't see anything, then I will go. But I hope to see something.
Stefania, you can wait for 8 seconds or so and let's see if someone cannot tolerate the silence anymore. But I think it'd be really nice to hear stories. I think I'm sure there's a wealth of stories out there that we could learn from right here. So let's open the floor. If you would like to speak, please unmute your microphone and share your story. I see a couple of people have unmuted the microphone, but we cannot hear you. So if you are speaking, check your audio settings and make sure we can actually hear you. If you go to zoom.us, you can go to preferences and audio settings and check your speaker and microphone settings. So this is interesting, Stefania. There are so few people wanting to talk about their failures. So it looks like everyone is only experiencing success in this session. It's amazing.
I have to say it's difficult. And I have to say, we do get primed to think that the only way to go further in life is by not making anything wrong. So I understand you. I understand you. I was like you. And it's fine. And it's fine. And we can like talk. I will really suggest to talk about the things that went wrong with each other and to be able to share, maybe not in such a big setting, but just with your colleagues, because this really triggers new things. Ooh, Nairi, you came at office. Yes.
Hello. Thank you so much for a really fascinating session, by the way. Just a quick experience that we had, and I'm not sure if this is relevant, but hopefully it is. We were working in Mozambique after the tropical cyclones, the WMO. And one of the things that we realized was that the Met Service were being asked to issue a red alert up to 10 days ahead of the tropical cyclones when they didn't really know where the tropical cyclones were going to land. And at the same time, the disaster risk managers needed that alert in order to be able to get the government to release the finance ahead of the tropical cyclones for early action. Understandably, the Met Service didn't want to issue the red alert because you don't do that far ahead, especially until you know where it's going to land. But at the same time, understandably, the disaster risk management agencies needed that information to make sure the government would give them the financing to be as prepared as possible. So it's an interesting sweet point there, I think, that needs to be addressed a little bit in terms of developing the early action protocols, in terms of understanding the lead times needed, maybe the warnings that should be made just within government circles and decision makers so that they can be confident in what they're doing, but obviously versus the kind of alerts you want to issue out to the public at the same time. So there's no confusion or lack of action when you actually need people to take action. Does that make sense and hopefully useful?
That's very useful, because what you're bringing out is the point that things can go wrong. Well, one with there is no the right collaboration between the stakeholders, but also when there are many people here from the humanitarian world, and there are many people from the Met Office, and something that maybe we don't talk enough is the peer pressure that this process puts on the Met Office.
Absolutely, because if it doesn't happen, they're the ones, unfortunately, who tend to get the blame. And the Met Office in the UK, we've experienced that a lot. And so we're very sensitive to that, I think, when we work with Met Services, but also in terms of how we continually improve our services. It is, it is a co-production thing. You have to continually work together to keep improving the understanding of the thresholds and the vulnerabilities, and that work has to be done together in partnership.
That is great. Thank you so much, Nairi, for sharing this. Do we have other unmuted people that would like to talk?
Stefania, I can mention something if you would like.
Oh, definitely. Hi, Liz.
Yeah, hi, it's Liz Stevens from the University of Reading, but also working for the Red Cross Climate Centre at the moment. I'm going to try and anonymize this example, but there was a few years ago, we were setting up El Nino early action protocols. And I really think in that particular country, and well, actually in many countries in the world, the presence of an El Nino event really focuses the attention. So it's, before the El Nino event is called, there's kind of not a lot happening. And then El Nino, everyone rushes to do a particular thing. And and set up their early actions and so on. But actually the following year, there was no El Nino event, or certainly not this big sort of Central Pacific El Nino event, but actually the seasonal forecast of rainfall had an incredibly strong signal. But because there wasn't this big El Nino, I think people weren't really having their attention focused on what might be happening in the region. And actually there was an enormous amount of flooding, but nothing had happened. So I think it's just an example of like how these sort of ways of thinking then impact on all of the things that happen following on from that.
Yes, yes, Liz, thank you so much. This is also about what people pay attention to, and you know, like I'm not a climate scientist, but you know, I know when there is like El Nino, La Nina, all of a sudden it resonates in a way that may be different than seasonal forecast. There are like some really trend and buzzwords that people also pay a lot of attention to. And sometimes it's also, there is so much around that it's really difficult to understand what is important. So that is why it's great to have the scientific community really helping making this. And so it's all, what Naomi was saying, it's all co-creation and co-production with stakeholders, Met offices, humanitarian actors, scientific actors. It's great. Thank you, Liz. Bettina, what do we do? Do we look for another sharing? I
think we'll do another story.
We'll do another story. Okay, so because Stefania is always involved in stuff that goes wrong, I'm gonna share with you another story. Okay, this time we are in a beautiful country crossed by so many rivers and of course, prone to a lot of flooding. Again, national society, Met offices, government work together to set up an anticipatory system. The collaboration is really good. It's really what Nairi was saying. This was really co-creation and co-production. So now flood season starts. What happens? Bettina? Yes. So as I said, an anticipatory system is being set up. However, the system is ready, fully ready, lots of work done, no floods, of course. The National Society is questioned by the donors for the waste of resources. Why are you doing all this work for floods that do not even happen? The system is ready, and big floods, of course. Or the system is not ready because it was delayed because of, you know, COVID-19 and the big floods of course. Guess what?
Okay, let's give it a moment for people to vote. If you've just joined, please go to menti.com and type in the code that you can see here on the screen, 4684411, and tell us what your best guess is in the story. I think we have a tie here. Maybe there's a very slight preference for flooding occurring and a slight preference for people saying the system was not ready. I think they're sharing into the pessimist mindset here. Some more optimists coming along. So Stefania, what happened?
This was the dream situation. The system was ready. A flood occurred. Great, we're gonna test. This is the activation that we were looking for. Everybody ready? What happens next? The National Society was actually monitoring and received the notification that the big flood was going to occur. So, of course, they go and call up all the key stakeholders. Activation, there is a flood. What do we do? Option one. The flood happened during Christmas, everybody was in vacation. Nobody replies to emails or phone calls, no action is taken. Second option, large-scale evacuations are started. It was one of the early action. Let's start from the easy one, evacuation. Okay, let's do. Third option, the stakeholders also received the notification. They have no idea what that means. And actually, they don't know what to do because we didn't discuss the standard operational procedure yet. What happened?
Okay, I think we're starting to get a clear picture here, Stefania. It looks like most people are pretty sure that the stakeholders did actually not understand the message and were not sure what to do. Vast majority. I think this time we had a very clear favorite. So Stefania, what happened?
I want to think that this is happening because actually you have seen this happening a number of times. I was mesmerized. We had the perfect activation, everything ready to test, but we never discussed how to do this. Actually, this triggered a huge conversation in the middle of a huge flood about mandates. So who had to send out the warning? Who has to call who? And no early action were actually done because the protocol was impossible to activate in this way. What did we learn? A lot. So from that moment, every time I am involved in supporting early action protocol activation, the first question that I do is, are we already discussing standard operational procedure with the stakeholder? When do we start? It's probably like people are probably tired of me, but this is my background. This is what happens when you do all the work and you forget one little thing. Standard operational procedures with all the stakeholders. And I can tell you, the National Society thought that we could be done at the end of the road. You know, everybody thought that everything was going fine. We were like the coyote, you know, flying on solid ground, but already being down the cliff, actually. And that was the oh moment saying, gosh. Okay, so this really was a learnful experience. And now actually this is something that is triggering much of the discourse when we support the early action protocols. I am looking at a question from the chat. Any drills before, simulations. Yeah, you know, when you are developing an early action protocol that everything is expected to be in place before doing a simulation. And sometimes because the early action protocols are developed during projects, the projects are not actually, you know, in line with the calendars of disaster. So if your project starts in September and your flood season starts in October, you probably just started calling up the stakeholder and setting up the technical working group. So when the flood happened in December, nothing is ready. So yeah, that's a very good question. Simulations. This is something actually that we have been looking at also together with the Climate Center. Simulations should always be done. COVID, what do we do with COVID? We have, of course, to set up simulation also with COVID. My team is experimenting, doing user testing of early warning platforms, and at the same time simulating the standard operational procedure, just checking everybody knows who needs to be called. We are learning from it. Bettina, I think that we can move towards the end of the presentation, right? And I think that we can move also actually to a positive note. So I showed you a lot of things that can go wrong. And I also told you that it's okay that they're going wrong because we are learning from it. And if things do not go wrong and we always think about being right, we really do not learn and do not move forward. For the positive note, we are getting there. We are getting there because we are learning and because we are actually talking to each other about this. So I love this cartoon. So this is one of the fantastic cartoons that the Climate Center is producing about anticipatory action and what can go wrong actually. And it has these two cavemen looking at a almost wheel, kind of rolled, but not really. I say we give up. Well, this is, if that would have happened, where would we be now, right? No, we don't have to give up. We actually have to keep on trying to make this wheel round, and we will be getting there, but it will not be easy. It will also not be fast. And of course, we cannot do this alone. We have to work together to make this happen. I think that this is basically the last message that I wanted to give to you, but I want to end this presentation with actually a little activity for you, because I've been talking about things going wrong. I've been saying that it's okay, things go wrong. I made you possibly think about things that went wrong and what you learned from it. So now I want to ask you something, which is, after having heard this presentation, and maybe after this presentation, you go have a coffee and like think about these things, what do you think you will do different the next time that you find yourself being wrong? And Bettina, please run this Menti for us. Thank you.
Good. So we hope you can put on your thinking cap. These entries are anonymous. Please join menti.com, code 4684411, and think about, what do you hope you'll do next time, the moment you realize you were actually wrong. Maybe you're doing it already, then you hope you'll do it again. But share with us, what do you think you hope or you wish you were doing in the moment you realize you were wrong? We'd love to hear your thoughts, your ideas. Hopefully we'll inspire each other to really think about, in a reflective way, of failure and realizing that we are wrong as an amazing opportunity to do things differently as we move forward. I think, as Stefania was showing in the cartoon, the wheel is not altogether round, but it's getting there. So what will help us to get there? I think it can be generic or it can be specific on anticipatory action. What is it you would like to do differently? And I'm not sure if you can see the chat, Stefania, and if people are able to type. Let's see if we can hear from you. What do you hope you'll do differently next time? Let's take a moment and see if we can have a couple of suggestions in the Menti, menti.com, 4684411. We'd love to hear from you. What are your tips and tricks? What to do when you realize you're wrong? We'll give you a minute.
Is it a word cloud?
No, it'll be text bits coming up. So you can have a sentence or two. And we'll just wait for some entries to come in. Okay, we have them here actually. Here we are. Okay. Identify why and just try to fix it, reflect and improvise maybe, accept it and move forward. Let's do it better next time. Embrace the lesson learned and move forward with more insights and confidence. Plan in advance based on the learning experience. Learn the lesson and be better next time. Continue improvement. Ponder what I can do better next time. I like ponder. It's nice and soft and gentle, not so fierce and harsh. What do you say, Stefania? Accepting I'm wrong and learn from it, rectify so that the mistake doesn't repeat. Learn how to improve, learn from failure and retry. Share what I've learned. Great one. So other people can also learn. Own up by my mistake, be transparent about it with my team and take responsibility for finding the way forward. There's a great cartoon, Stefania, of 3 people lost in the jungle and the father saying to his partner and his kid, okay, I admit we are lost, but let's focus on the real question. And that is whose fault it is that we are lost. So exactly, very good one. A collaboration with stakeholders, learn from failure and retry, apologize, reflect, maybe be brave enough to share widely, question mark. Maybe try to plan to foresee the issues I faced previously, confront myself with someone so that I can ask for help and look for solutions to overcome my problem and avoid the same mistake, improve my preparedness. Personal preparedness, also a great point. Stefania, any thoughts?
Yes, so I think it's great. I think that I take words from these, and like I love that: ponder, share, and learn. And really, I think that this is what we can take away. Like, take a moment to reflect on what went wrong in a gentle way. That ponder is fantastic. It reminds me about you just sitting down and looking into the ocean, or and just thinking about what just happened. Is like a gentle way of thinking and not banging on your head. Share. Talk with colleagues, talk with your friends, be transparent. I really like that, and learn because this is really the only option we have to learn. Things have to go wrong. Look at the children. I have a little 1.5-year-old, and when she learned to walk, she just kept on falling, and that's how children learn, and that's also how we learn, just keeping on making mistakes. We should not forget about that. And I think on this note, we should probably close this session and leave maybe a few minutes also for the people to take some learnings from this and move on to the next session in this conference, which I looked at the agenda, is amazing. I'm gonna fly all over so many sessions. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening about what can go wrong in anticipatory action. I hope this session has helped you opening your mind and thinking about what can go wrong. If one of you tomorrow does something different when things go wrong, I will be the happiest person in the world. Feel free to contact me in case you want to talk about things that go wrong. Thank you so much about this, and hope to see you around in the other sessions in this conference. Thank you, Bettina, for your amazing support. Applause to you. And thank you. And to the next time that things go wrong, we'll talk again. Bye.
Thank you all. Thanks for joining. And I can just resonate what Stefania say. When things go wrong, it's a great opportunity for learning. So we hope you take it, embrace it, and emerge more confident and stronger, and probably also good for your health to admit when things are not going so well, while we are on the health topic. And with this, I want to say, we had a session where someone said, what motivates me? And someone says, if a session closes early. So we hope you're fully motivated. We have a couple of minutes to spare. Thank you all. Thank you, Stefania. And all the best for the conference.
Bye-bye.